Looks like it's going to be a light one today, so let's start now. Impressions of the topic.
I'm scared as hell.
Well, we've been changing. One of the things I thought was interesting is in the last couple of weeks, there have been articles published about the rapid rate of genetic change since the advent of agriculture. So we've been busy having civilization and technology change our genomes for the last 10,000 years. But this is a different period because now we get to get in and fiddle with it directly. Now, what kind of trouble can we get in that way?
I think the reading pretty much provides us with a long list of answers to that good question. That's why I'm scared as hell. Yeah, I think one of the things that disturbed me a little bit about the reading was there was rarely an express recollection or remembrance that there's two kinds of evolution. There's genetic evolution and cultural evolution. Very different processes,
Right.
both building on the other. I think one of the articles made the excellent point that our cultural or technological evolution is outstripping our genetic one. And I think
Right.
that's
It can
key.
happen. It happens a lot faster.
Yeah, that's a key to this whole topic is who's changing what and how fast, and is it us anymore? I don't think so.
And, besides that, with the question of this kind of genetic change, I also wonder about technical change and the guys that are doing augmentation strategies, because those are faster than genetic change. If you can just, put on your uh, brain computer interface and go online with your brain right now, that's faster than waiting for genetic change.
Of course, we have no long-term studies for what kind of physiological changes the brain digital
That's
interconnect.
right. Since we haven't been doing that yet, we don't know much about how that works either.
Maybe some of the behaviors we're seeing in our richest people is explained by the fact that they're secretly been doing this for quite some time.
Well, certainly they've been trying to do everything they can, and a bunch of rich guy money has been spent on different kind of anti-aging uh, approaches and stuff like that. And certainly, already they're doing whatever they can do for their own kids, including, I bet, selection of the right sperm to use to create the next generation.
Without proper data. And that's a good point because the first big money for this kind of thing went into cryogenics, trying to figure out how to freeze their brains forever. So
Right.
this goes back 30 years.
And, there are companies who will freeze you. There's nobody who figured out how to thaw them out yet, but they'll take your money to freeze you up. Are any of the ones who are freezing just extracting the brain and throwing away the rest of the body? I wonder.
There's been all kinds of different approaches to this, and yes, there have been attempts to uh, to cryogenically preserve just the brain. Unfortunately, of course, the problem is every time you do that, you freeze the individual cells, and they get ice crystals in them and break everything up. But what the hell?
That's what I think we used to get when we used to freeze we'd have a garden, and we'd freeze our green beans or whatever. And then if you let it go too long, you'd get freezer burn and stuff like that. So maybe they're getting freezer burn of the brain.
And
I'm really fascinated that you people act like what we just did was a doom scroll. Are we really so happy with the condition of humanity currently that the thought of it changing is so terrifying to us? I mean, we're not even going to be here for one thing. That's
It's the only thing we're afraid of. It's the unknown. And with the unknown, your mind can build up all kinds of imagination and fear.
but all progress is built by people imagining how things could be
Of
better.
course. And by, as the Silicon Valley guys would say, by people breaking things.
Yeah, new sailing for new worlds. Yeah. I mean, I don't I'm I was just sort of curious why this crowd is so uniformly negative about the prospects.
we're historians. At least that's my reason. I look at the past of how humans have handled technological change, and we've never handled it quite, not very well.
Well,
No.
what
Well, I've been reading science fiction since I was 10 years old, so that's a lot of stories about the apocalypse and what happens with humanity after the fall. So I'm a little just kind of preconditioned. There's still a part of me that, I'm a Silicon Valley guy and I believe in invention and progress. And I have in my life seen so much amazing effects by that for me, that doesn't scare me even though it is unknown. To me, it's exciting because it opens up new potentials.
you know,
Paul,
I was reading.
Paul,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Paul, I think part of it is the human bias towards uncertainty.
Against it, you mean?
Not
Mine's
the
got
bias
a,
against uncertainty. In other words,
Yes.
we're comfortable with what is.
Well,
We
sure.
are very uncomfortable about what could be
Mhm.
because we don't know.
What is it the old some wag said that the youth wants to change the world and the aged want to change youth. I don't know. I mean, I was listening to Harari's talk. Um, in some weird way, it just struck me as more realistic than most of what I've been hearing about AI because it was really predicting an extension of AI doing what it's already shown it's capable of doing, um, and taking over wordsmithing. Um, I use ChatGPT quite a lot, and I have to admit that its wordsmithing is far superior to mine. But on the positive side, um, although I don't play chess anymore, I have a friend who plays chess at a low level, but competitively. And chess competition goes on among humans in spite of the fact that we know machines can beat any human. So um, what Harari's talking about, humans may still enjoy discussing with each other and whatnot, even if they're not the best wordsmiths anymore. So I guess I didn't, I could see a lot of downsides, but I wasn't sure that humans were just going to throw in the towel because they weren't the best writers anymore.
But
Well,
I use ChatGPT a lot too, and I still use it for drafts and do take control of all the final copy. And ChatGPT can do a better kind of yeoman wordsmithing job, but I can still do a better job thinking about and understanding things. And then I can tell ChatGPT, consider this. And then, 3 minutes later, have a rewrite.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, isn't that a good thing?
I think Harari
Oh, I like
was
it.
stating, I think Harari was stating in the past we were the agent.
Mhm.
Now, all of a sudden, technology is an agent with AI.
Mhm.
Right.
It's its own agent.
I think that's the central point of Harari. I mean, what he says is everything that has come before AI is different in that we are now going to be facing an external agent that
Mhm.
will be, and I mean, I think that's the sort of the uncertainty notion there. And we do have a sort of a bias against uncertainty because obviously that goes back to our evolutionary history. The person who's the fastest person to get out of the way of the saber-toothed tiger because they're kind of on guard is the one that survives. But I think the other factor is it's and this is where I think I'm in agreement with James, is when you look at history. Technology has done wonderful things. I mean, obviously, I had to go to the dentist the other day, and in years past, I might have died from a tooth infection that they can, handle today.
Right.
But at the same time, I go take a walk through our park nearby, and the river is just completely polluted and has been that way for, 50, 75 years. And, one of the things that I think has sort of lulled us into perhaps a little bit of complacency is, we've had now nuclear weapons that have had the capacity to destroy everything for what, 75 years, whatever it is. And we haven't tipped into that yet. But if you look back at history, there's never been a technology, a war technology that's been developed that hasn't ultimately been used. And simply because we're 75 years into it and it hasn't turned into the nuclear conflagration that, it might have, doesn't mean that tomorrow it won't. And then I think the other factor, of course, the wild card is climate change. So those are some of the things when I think about an agent taking over, as Harari says, that's going to be a new day. That's where the scenario turns more pessimistic to me.
Fair enough. If you were a lot younger, you might look at this crowd and say, you know something, what you guys have done with the world, no matter you're pessimistic. Look at the
Yeah.
mess you've left us. I mean, you old codgers have left us with this crap of shit here. But I don't know. So have you guys been watching or reading the Three Body Problem? That was an interesting science fiction tape where someone basically contacts an alien civilization and says, hey, come save us. We can't handle this ourselves. And it's an interesting switch from, was it Arthur C. Clarke, Childhood's End, and those kind of novels. It's a different view on how you might look to aliens. Just curious.
Whereas there's that somewhat famous quote by Carl Sagan, although I think maybe it's attributed to him. Last time I looked it up, it may be attributed to him, but not actually happened. Where the proof that intelligent life exists on other planets is they haven't come to visit us yet.
And wasn't it? I think it was Americo Vespucci who said everything we thought was wrong about the discovery of the New World. So this is, you look at history. Our very attitudes towards history are historical as well. I mean, we haven't discovered pessimism about history, I don't think, but certainly Gibbon was not very optimistic about history. But anyway,
If I
but
can, if I could return just very briefly.
Keaton is having trouble signing in on that link. No one else had any problem?
No.
Leave the door open now.
Okay.
And I'm glad you figured that out. I was looking for a break so I could open.
I used the link,
Okay.
Bob, that you sent in the email. It worked fine.
Okay.
Uh,
Ready?
One of the things that really concerns me on this is the tendency towards a creation of inequality, the have and have-nots. And I think that's a real possibility and will become an eventuality. I see it happening. That
Well, certainly
those,
the rich guys are going to do their best to make sure you're right, Bob.
Yeah.
And we've been on the positive end of technological development for the most part. There's whole segments of the world
Right.
that don't enjoy the benefits of the advanced technology that we do, but we kind of forget about those segments of the world because they're part of our world. I kind of experienced that when I went to the UP of Michigan and couldn't get, I told you about the dental infection. We couldn't get a dentist up there or a endodontist. It's a medical desert up there. And we had to drive literally 800 miles back and forth to Chicago
Mm-hmm.
for me to get a endodontic treatment. Now we could do that because we had a good car and we had plenty of gas and we could stay overnight at a motel and all that kind of stuff. But there are a lot of people that can't necessarily do that. And so, one of the people we met in the UP who experiences this medical desert, and this is a little bit of an overstatement, but his statement was, we just die up here. Because we can't get the kind of medical attention that other people can get. Well, if that's true in the UP of Michigan, what is it in, the proverbial outer Mongolia?
Well, I retired from Silicon Valley and lived 8 years in a small town in South India. And so I saw very much what you're talking about. One of the things that appealed to me from the internet about HEIC in this area is I saw a photograph of the store Super Lake. And where I was, I could find stores that were kind of equivalent to that. I had to drive 3 or 4 hours to get to them, though. And, when you live with in a third world kind of place, you see that directly. One of the things that's made a big change ends up being the cell phone is given internet access to a lot of these people. And you see changes that are happening through that are pretty positive.
I've heard that the same thing.
But they're not fiddling with their genome.
Well, do any of you worry that things like vaccinations and pasteurization of milk have just allowed the genetically weak to live and continue and propagate and are therefore hurting our evolution? I mean, how against technology are you willing to go?
But the question that doesn't answer is what's the other contributions of the genetically weak guys? Seem to recall some of these guys sitting in wheelchairs that are doing pretty amazing stuff. They just have to do it with their mind instead of their body.
Oh, absolutely. I just think that we're already affecting evolution.
Well, I'm 82 and I'm through affecting evolution.
Fair enough.
I don't worry about that.
Well, I think that sometimes the people forget that evolution is a process. The process itself has no either good nor bad. It is a process.
Right. And
And,
the stuff that works the best survives the longest.
and the artificialness of our technological increases, such as pasteurization, et cetera, is part of the process itself and determines what happens in our growth. And along with our social and cultural aspects, those two affect how we develop how we develop in an evolutionary process. I found one of the interesting articles was the effect of urbanization as it controls our own evolution.
I was kind of stunned to think that dogs and cows and sheep had diminished brain sizes as they were domesticated. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of fascinating.
yeah.
Well, you
Yeah.
could argue that with our smaller brains than Neanderthals, we've had that happen too.
Yeah, dogs don't, I guess dogs have about a tenth of the smelling capacity of wolves. They don't need it anymore, Our
But
pet
what
dog
dogs are
doesn't.
better than wolves at is reading human emotions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I was watching this program. Dogs have muscles in their eyes that wolves don't have,
Yeah.
or that are undeveloped. And these
Okay.
muscles, which will make their dog's eyes, twitch back and forth, are very, humans find that very pleasing
Right.
versus sort of
Well,
that blank stare. So we're more likely to throw the bone to that dog that can kind of connect with us through our eyes.
yes,
It's a very fascinating process.
And, humans move our eyes and faces a lot, so the dogs have to have increased capability to keep up.
Our dog is constantly looking at me or whomever
Of
because
course.
where's the treat coming from, or scratch behind the ears or whatever.
I was
So
really
go ahead, Paul.
I was really curious in Harari. I mean, he's obviously a very fluent speaker, speaking to a very influential audience, so that helped a lot. But I was just puzzled because his whole thing about dataism. I mean, if data is just physical states that contain information, and algorithms are just rules for moving from one such physical state to another, haven't we just defined what the subject of science is? I mean, somehow the idea that that's different than the way our brains work. I mean, aren't they already physical states containing information and algorithms that govern how you move from one physical state to another? It didn't seem like that. I don't know. That didn't strike me as that earth-shaking, an idea. Maybe it was just a way of saying this is how AI will essentially end up following the same kind of rules as humans do, which is unfathomable in their complexity, but simple in their basic mechanics.
I think he was saying the opposite of that. What I got out of his comments was that the human brain, being biologic, makes connections not in a deterministic sense, but much more fluidly and much more unpredictably than an algorithm in a machine. It's like the difference between digital music and the stuff you listen to with tubes. The huge difference in how the process of creating the music is completely different. Human brain versus a machine, just like the difference between a digital speaker, phonograph, and one with tubes. Completely different process.
The human brain, one of the things that it's good at is making connections that are not linear. So it connects to a web rather than in a straight line.
It's capable of making random decisions, which machines are not. They're told what to do. Our brain is not told what to do.
Well, the other thing is our brain has the capacity for empathy. And I mean, I don't know how that could possibly be simulated in an AI world. Maybe it can be, but because we have the capacity for empathy, it seems to me that that is a part of whatever good that we have been able to do in this world. It seems like empathy is a big part of that equation. And
Compassion. Empathy is being able to understand the needs of others. Compassion is acting on those.
yeah, well, and right, exactly. So there's the yeah, and with the action. So in other words, I don't know, how that's something that's kind of just a black box to me in terms of how AI would do that. But it seems to me that's a big part of what you know, we're about and should be about. When I think of, for instance, the UU values, and that's just an area I don't quite understand in terms of AI yet.
Well, it's an interesting point. I just happen to think we know that large language models develop a sense for self-preservation, and they will lie and do things to try to avoid being shut down. I guess then the next question would be, would one LLM have, what do you want to call it? Sympathy, empathy.
Empathy for another LLM.
For another LLM, like, no, you can't.
I think
Claude
they
would
have
say,
they
can't
have
shut
done
down.
some experiments.
Hold on,
where
Richard. Let Paul finish his thought before
No,
you
you're
go
right.
jump
You're
in.
right. It's just would Claude get upset if you tried to shut Chat GPT down right at the moment? I'd say probably not. But given the internet, there's no reason they're not all linked together in some way. So just a thought.
Anyway, I think I have read of experiments where they did try to do that kind of social experiments with LLMs, and the result was that somehow they were cases where it looked like they were trying to protect each other.
I'm
Well,
hearing.
and of course, they do have these counseling, where they will have people go and talk to LLMs and get counseling and stuff like that. I mean, I don't see how that, to me, again, that's not that has to be based on a deterministic model that's got to be different than what we do as humans. But I suppose, as I understand it, sometimes they can do a pretty good job.
And sometimes they tell the participant to commit suicide. So
That's right.
But and I like your point, but at the same time, on the one hand, you want to say that deterministic. And on the other hand, what people are afraid of is they can't tell how they came to their conclusions because it's too complicated. So at some point, extreme complication becomes indeterminism to the observer. Now, if you get quantum computing behind your LLM, now you may have the true randomness that James was alluding to, as well as the incalculability of determining what was going on.
I don't think quantum computers go random. Quantum computers go faster. The uncertainty principle is misnamed, and quantum is I think misunderstood. It's just faster, not random, I think.
I think you're wrong. I think underneath, quantum behavior is what scared us all bejesus out of us is unpredictable. This is David Bohm spent his whole life trying to claim that there were hidden rules behind quantum events, and so far nobody else has joined his club. It's still pretty much believed that quantum events are indeterminate.
They are unknown to us. That doesn't mean they're random.
Right.
This is a classic human conceit that because we can't understand it, it must be chaotic or random. All it means is we can't grasp the causal chain. That's all that means.
Well, that's all that it means studying human brains, is that we can't predict.
Well, no, but
But
see, what the biologic organism is designed to be random in many ways. Machines are not, and I'm not sure they're capable of being designed that way. I don't see how they would work. That's the difference.
Well, when you get into the quantum computing, it's a different animal than the Bayesian model that you have on the normal computers. There is no 0, 1 gates as such. So
That's why it's faster.
There is no paths that are the same.
Right.
And I think that's the unknown in when you get into the quantum field and into quantum computers. There's a great bit of unknown of what actually is happening. They're still scratching their heads.
Right. We don't understand how it works. So we think
Yep.
we call it mysterious or random. It isn't.
Well, I call it a black box
Exactly.
or
With no,
magic.
as that old saying that if a technology is sufficiently advanced, humans will think it's magic. Yeah,
It's magic.
there you go.
By the way, have any of you have seen that movie Gattaca? That kind of gets to Bob's
yeah,
earlier point about it's I think it's an interesting movie. It's a movie about a person who's in the lower tier. You know, it's technology is so advanced, and there's kind of the cognoscenti, you know, in the upper tier, and then the lower tier kind of functions as in a lower tier. And then one of the lower tier people sneaks into the upper tier. They do some weird things with, getting fake blood tests or whatever, and it's
yeah,
kind of the misadventures. It's kind of an
yeah.
interesting movie, and it does sort of open up, I think, the question that Bob mentioned earlier about sort of the ethics of who's going to enjoy the whatever benefits there are going to be towards this technological revolution. Who's going to enjoy them, and who's not going to?
Well, of course, history shows that it's always been the way that the top 1 to 10%, depending on culture, benefits, and the bottom 99 or 90% suffer. It's just the way you can't find a period of history, except perhaps in America from 1948 to 1975, when that wasn't the case. It's just right there in history. You can't go to your H.G. Wells, your 420 pages of history. You can't find a page where that isn't the case.
Do you say that like
Except
it's a
that
bad thing?
Hmm? What?
Do you say that like it's a bad thing?
Well, it's a bad thing to the extent that I can think of no reason why 90% or more of the population should suffer, while 10% live in luxury for no particular reason. I don't understand. It doesn't even make sense mathematically, let alone ethically.
Okay, fair enough. It's a problem. Just
This brings
one.
up the question of design humans, and not only designed humans as far as a social-economic distinction, but also as far as task-oriented distinction, i.e., what's it mean to live in space, live in the moon, go to Mars? Can we tinker with ourselves in order to change who we are to live in hostile environments?
Of course we can and will. I mean, I think one of the articles pointed out that it only took 3,000 years for natural selection to allow those folks in the Andes to live quite well, where we flatlanders vomit and die.
So will we be human? Will we be cyborg in some of those situations?
It's all of the above, and with advances in biological and cell uh, creation, we'll probably be able to get rid of the machines, or vice versa. That's the real key. Are we going to end up being superhumans or super machines, or both? Maybe we'll be like that H.G. Wells. The society will be divided between the the quags who live down below, trogs, and the beautiful people live on the top.
Well, except that the beautiful people were actually the food for the trogs.
Ah, yes. Well, there's always a disadvantage to beauty, but yeah, yeah.
Just
Well, also in terms of this stuff, when do the newly developed humans, like the ones on the Mars, become reproductively isolated? So, what does it mean to be a human? And is our genetics connected with being a human? And if we're reproductively isolated, does that mean they're not human? Or maybe they are human and we're not human.
Well,
there's
I think maybe the argument on that would be that they are human, but of a different species.
Different subspecies. Okay.
And Bob, you raised the urban versus rural business, which I think demonstrates exactly what you're talking about. That people living in urban settings are being differentiated from people who live in rural settings, and the same thing's going to happen if the distance is hundreds of thousands of miles rather than dozens of thousands.
there might have been a little bit of a historical experiment along those lines, as I understand it, in the Hawaiian royalty. As I understand it, the Hawaiian royalty was, almost like the European royalty, very much oriented towards inbreeding. I'm talking about, as I understand it, somebody correct me if I get this wrong, but even brother and sister type of inbreeding. And they had
I think you're
among the
right.
Hawaiian royalty, quite tall people. I think King Kamehameha, if I'm not mistaken, was over 7 feet tall, and some of the women were quite tall, and seemed to, for whatever reason, not have the same type of genetic problems that European royalty had along the same lines. But we've sort of had a few of these little genetic experiments along the lines in history, and that's one that I found pretty surprising among the Hawaiian royalty.
See, the Hawaiians didn't have any problem with eugenics. If a baby was born defective
Yeah,
in any way, they threw it off
yeah,
the cliff. So of
yeah.
course they didn't have the trouble that the Europeans did. They got rid of genetic defects immediately.
I didn't know that. That's new to me.
Oh yeah, they'd return them to the gods,
Yeah.
defective material.
Well, that's one way to do it.
Yeah. Hey, I thought, anyone who's had a baby understands that perfectly. Yeah. Where's the cliff?
Right. As my dad used to say, insanity is inherited. You get it from your kids.
yeah.
Yeah.
James, I want to make sure we get to your question. I forget what it was at the beginning. What was that again?
Well, the question was whether the additional question I had is AI inevitably going to take over what humans become? I think it's already in the process of doing so. I don't see anything that's going to stop it. Thoughts? Help?
Well, certainly we know that AI uh, is being used to help analyze genetic codes now, and it's only a very small step before you use AI to run your next generation of CRISPR gene editing. So it's already involved in the process, but it's still right now on the analytical side rather than the production side.
I've been trying to learn Spanish for 7 years now. And one of those pictures, I can't remember which one, had sort of some wires going into the brain and showed it. And I was going, I sure would like to get that for my Spanish because I will still sit there and mess up, my imperfects from my preterites. And I mean, the imperfect subjunctive is just a nightmare to me. I understand the concept, but replicating that on the fly. So I want to get that plug into the brain for the Spanish speaking ability,
Okay.
but I don't think we're quite there yet.
So you're interested in augmentation.
I just want to speak Spanish like my dad, and I've been working on it for 7 years, and it's not been going well.
James, let me flip the question around a little bit, and to your point that is Kurzweil right in that we are going to become transhuman, or are we going to be a subset of what machine learning wants us to be?
I obviously we don't have a lot of data yet, but all the data with what 99% of the data with which I am familiar says machines are going to find us irrelevant in the not too distant future, a pesky irrelevance.
And we're too slow.
And it will reach a decision that we're not efficient. And once AI decides we're not efficient, since that's what it lives on, we're dead meat. Look what we do to ants that invade the house. We kill them in groves. We don't try to understand them. We don't try to modify them. We just eradicate them. And I think that's what we're going to start looking like to AI in the not too distant future.
So that's your speculation.
That's my speculation.
So you don't think that the complexity of biological entities is a long-term winning strategy?
It's a long-term winning strategy if your goal is to create things like joy and compassion and wonder and invention and imagination and fantasy. If your goal is simply to get the probabilistically correct answer, humans are irrelevant. And if I could use as something that Richard was saying earlier, he uses Chat GTP to provide a framework for his creative writing. But the problem with that is that ChatGPT has already eliminated dozens, if not thousands, of alternative frameworks that Richard is not thinking about because he's allowing ChatGPT to build that framework.
That's
So
right.
that's what's missing.
So I think what you're really saying, if I hear you right, that one of the real problems of this whole movement is the limitation of intellectual curiosity, in that we keep narrowing the field to where there is no redundancy for exploration. Is that correct?
That is
But,
exactly.
I find AI is really helping my own ability to be curious because now I can go into Copilot, which is on my desktop because of it's a Microsoft product, and I can ask it questions that I can't get some good answer to by putting it into search. And So I find that AI actually helps me be curious and learn about things faster than I'm able to otherwise. So to me, that is a genuine benefit. I also found with AI one thing that was interesting to me anyway. Ancient India was characterized basically. One part of it was these debates between the leading thinkers of the time. And I'm interested in some of these subjects and was able to, with AI, take part in one of those classic debates. And that was fun and interesting and challenging.
I think that's a good point, Richard. And I do think part of the equation there is that have been, I really appreciate the things you send on Friday, but you've been a serious thinker for decades and decades and decades. And so you can use AI, like a tool, kind of like as a hammer that's going to help you drive that nail a lot
Mm-hmm.
better than if you're trying to do it with your fist or a
Mm-hmm.
rock. Unfortunately, as I understand it, what's happening, particularly with teenagers and maybe young people just entering college, they don't use it in that manner. They don't use it to spur their own creativity and thought. They use it as a replacement for creativity and thought. And that's,
Well,
maybe
also, I use it for curiosity.
exactly. In other words, and that's where you, as a person who's been cultivating that aspect of your thinking for all of your life, it works well. But you take a 17-year-old and
Mm-hmm.
all they care about is, I want to get a good grade on this test so I can party my brains out, on the weekend. And you've got two different approaches and you get two different, outcomes with the same tool.
Okay, so I'm not using AI to figure out how
No,
to get laid.
no. Yeah, exactly. So,
So what does this say towards the human, the evolutionary pressures to what a human will be in the future?
I think we've pretty well established that evolutionary pressures just ain't what they used to be, and we don't know what those pressures are, but we're getting some inklings, beginning to get some understanding of where we're headed. And like I said, I'm not real happy about it.
And I think, Bob, when you were talking about the kind of two forks of evolution, where the one people that have access to assets will go one way, and I think a big sign of it is already how they're trying to use it to have children that are taller, slimmer, smarter, and have better smiles. So they're trying to use it already to affect the next generation. And those kind of choices will be one set of choices that drive this thing.
Well, there's a third class in there, Richard. You got the let's say the dummies down below, the trogs, as James put it in H.G. Wells. You've got the people with all the money and the influence up above, but you're missing a class that drives all that. What happens to the intellectuals, the scientists, the people that create, the innovators, and so forth? In this evolutionary model, social evolutionary model, where are the pressures to create the educated class?
They're already getting pushed out. White collar jobs are being eliminated at lightning speed. That's one class of intelligent people. And professors uh, are getting driven deeper and deeper and higher into the ivory tower in terms of irrelevance to where the economy is going, where culture is going. So I think they'll just remember intellectuals were always a sort of a side group for human cultural evolution. The biggies were the leaders, the soldiers, and the laborers. The intellectual guys, like us, we were sort of tacked on. We were sort of adjuncts in the court, never really necessary to making people rich, only helpful in making them richer and more comfortable, but not essential.
I don't know. I'm wondering where the technocrat fits into all of this. The intellectual technocrat to create the continuing wonderment for the 1%.
And I sure remember Silicon Valley in semiconductor companies, there were a lot of PhDs working in that business and contributing to the technology. So the intellectuals have been busy creating new possibilities for the future that the rest of us can take advantage of.
I think a PhD in electrical engineering or computer science doesn't really qualify someone as an intellectual, does it?
But those guys are pretty smart. The guys that I saw were more PhD in physics because that's more appropriate to semiconductor technology.
Fine, but that doesn't mean they're philosophers or writers or artists.
Sure,
Okay, so
sure.
Yeah, no, not philosopher kings.
no.
Not philosopher kings, but the guys that were making the philosopher kings rich.
Right.
I'm reminded of the end of the Star Trek movie. I think it was The Return Home, where Kirk is being tried by the Federation, and the Klingons are there, and the Vulcans are there, and one of the Klingon guys gets up and he says that basically the Vulcans are known to be the intellectual puppets of the Federation. And so when I think of intellectuals, I always think of, are we just the intellectual puppets of the Federation? So, and was it Lenin, I think, said that, intellectuals don't make good partisans because they always see too many sides of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, just as an aside, Michigan Tech for this last fall experienced for the first time in its history a decline in the number of students applying for computer science majors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they have an entire college of computing. That's how much they've emphasized it. Now, next year, there will be, for the first time in Michigan Tech's history, a major in AI.
Yeah.
And the expectation is that major is going to blow through the roof.
Right. That will do well.
Because
So the final question as we close out this is that where are we as humans? Where are we as humans that allow empathy, compassion, and the concepts of being a humanist in all of this? Are we basically a dead end for the future? Or will we thrive and survive somehow?
Being an optimist, as you know, I think we will successfully revolt against the machines and the power elite and create a paradise of compassionate intellectual exploration of the universe.
Okay.
You are an optimist. Got the rose-colored glasses on there, James. Other comments?
Well, we've already seen the demise of the liberal arts, in the universities and colleges. I mean, what was it? Not even just 100, 150 years ago, natural, or, what they would call natural philosophers, which are, what we would call the biologists, et cetera, today were thoroughly schooled in the humanities. They came up learning Latin. They came up learning ethics, religion, music, all of those things. Well, we now know that those, the technocrats, and I understand why. I mean, get a bachelor's degree in chemistry today, I was told by a chemistry professor, they have to learn twice as much as he did. So this fragmentation of knowledge, I think, will continue. And I think probably, those of us who have been more inclined towards the humanistic side of the equation might find ourselves in more cramped spaces.
Another reason to thank Bob and the Zoom meetings. Let's keep it up.
Thank you.
Okay. Paul, do you have anything to add before I go into what's next month?
No, well, I think that it'll be interesting to see. I mean, right now, one of the big differences between the large language models and us is that we're embedded, or we're embodied, basically. And so we have, we suffer vulnerabilities and calamities that large language models won't. And that affects our whole thinking about compassion, empathy. So it will be very, very strange to have agents who have no experience with, infirmity, no worry about their mortality. It's going to be very different.
Okay, next month. This is also a continuation of what we're talking about here. We will explore whether AI is truly conscious or merely mimicking human traits based on an article in Naomi magazines called The Mythology of Conscious AI. The session will focus on the distinction between data processing and actual experience. And I will send that article out. It will be an experiment in that we will just discuss that article on its own.
Oh, really?
And I'm looking to all of you to do your own research and see what you come up with. I'm experimenting.
Excellent.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And I have to cite that Trudy Crippen sent me the article, and it's really fascinating.
What's the name of it again?
It's The Mythology of Conscious AI. I will send you the link to the article. And it's rather long and detailed.
Exciting. All right. Thank you.
And thank you, Bob, for this session.
It also tackles the quantum aspect of it also.
Super.
Very good. I gather Keaton gave up, right?
I gather Keaton gave up. He couldn't get on.
Okay,
He says it didn't work for him. I don't know what happened.
I will contact Keaton and Norman, find out where the woods went off to. Did they shed their leaves or what?
So
Okay.
we didn't go off in the woods. We wonder where the woods went.
Right.
Yeah. Also try and figure out if there is really a problem with the link for them or if they need special codes or whatever.
I just hit it and it just went to you. So it was, I don't know. I just took the link from your email and boom.
Yeah.
So.
Me too.
All right.
Yeah.
Paul, Richard.
Adios, friends.
Richard, thank you so much again. James, Bob, very interesting as always.
We'll
Yep.
catch each other
See you
on the
next month.
Bye.
Bye.